The wind howled as we gathered in the old, creaky warehouse that served as our base for the mission. Shadows danced across the cracked concrete walls, flickering like ghostly figures in the dim light. I could see the nervous energy among my fellow explorers. Some exchanged anxious glances while others fiddled with their gear, pretending to focus on anything but the heavy atmosphere that surrounded us. We were part of a research team sent to explore an area of the city that had long been abandoned. The Dark Zone. The Dark Zone had been sealed off for decades, a remnant of an urban disaster that left the area contaminated and dangerous. Officially, it was an environmental hazard. Unofficially, it was whispered about in hushed tones, a place where strange occurrences took place, where people who entered sometimes never returned. It was also rumoured to be the testing ground for an unknown experiment conducted by the government, an experiment that had gone terribly wrong. The leader of our team, Dr. Emil Hartmann, a seasoned scientist with a reputation for taking risks, stood at the front. His glasses glinted ominously in the half-light as he addressed us. "Tonight," he said, his voice steady but filled with excitement, "we are not just exploring an abandoned zone. We are entering a place of untold mystery and possibly great discovery. The data we gather could revolutionize our understanding of what happened here." A mix of fear and curiosity surged through me. My name is Alex Green, and I had joined this expedition not for fame or glory, but out of a desire to uncover the truth behind the Dark Zone. The thrill of exploring the unknown gripped me tightly, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that we were stepping into a trap. Dr. Hartmann outlined the plan. We'll split into teams. Each group will cover a different sector. We will document everything and report back every hour. Remember, communication is crucial. He paused, looking into each of our eyes, gauging our readiness. "If anything seems off, if you hear something or see something you shouldn't, get out. Don't take risks." His words, meant to reassure us, only heightened my anxiety. It was already past sunset, the darkness enveloping the city like a thick blanket. The sun's last rays had vanished, leaving only the sickly glow of streetlights struggling against the encroaching night. As we suited up and prepared our gear, I glanced around at my fellow team members. There was Rachel, the tech genius with a passion for robotics. Ben, the grizzled veteran with scars that hinted at a life spent on the edge. And Mia, the enthusiastic environmental scientist who was eager to make a name for herself. We had a good mix of skills, but none of us could truly prepare for what lay ahead. With our flashlights and cameras ready, we piled into a rusty old van that would take us to the edge of the Dark Zone. As the engine sputtered to life, I felt an uneasy tension fill the cramped space. The streets outside grew more desolate, the buildings taller and more foreboding, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out for us. "Remember," Dr. Hartmann said from the front, "stay together, stay alert, and above all, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, don't hesitate to leave." The van rumbled along the bumpy road. The further we travelled, the more I could feel an oppressive silence settling in, like a predator lurking just out of sight. When we finally arrived at the entrance to the Dark Zone, the atmosphere shifted. The van's headlights illuminated a rusted gate covered in overgrown vines and graffiti that screamed warnings, "Leave now, and death awaits." My heart raced as we stepped out, the cold air biting at my skin. I could almost hear the whispers of those who had come before us. We gathered at the gate where Dr. Hartmann produced the keycard. With a swift swipe, the lock clicked open and the gate creaked inward, revealing the darkness beyond. It was as if we were being swallowed by the night itself. "Let's move," he urged, and we stepped into the Dark Zone. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness. Each footfall echoed, bouncing off the walls of crumbling buildings that surrounded us. Graffiti painted a chaotic mural across the walls, a tapestry of fear, desperation, and madness. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in, as if the shadows were alive, watching us with unseen eyes. We split into our designated teams, and I found myself with Rachel and Ben. The glow of our flashlights carved narrow paths through the gloom, illuminating fragments of a forgotten world. Broken glass, overturned furniture, and rusted machinery that hinted at a once bustling environment. As we ventured deeper, the buildings seemed to close in around us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced back toward the entrance, the light from the outside world dwindling, swallowed by the blackness behind us. "This place is creepy," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible above the silence. "Do you think we'll find anything here?" "Just keep your eyes open," Ben replied, scanning the area with a cautious look. "We're in uncharted territory. Anything could happen." As we moved further into the heart of the dark zone, I began to notice strange symbols etched into the walls, twisted designs that seemed to writhe in the darkness. My curiosity piqued. I stepped closer to examine one. It depicted a figure with elongated limbs and a wide, gaping mouth, an unsettling sight that sent shivers down my spine. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Rachel leaned in, her brow furrowing. "No, but it looks like some sort of ritualistic symbol. It gives me the creeps." "Let's keep moving," Ben urged. "We need to document as much as we can before we lose the light." We pressed on, passing through a dilapidated building that once had the remnants of a control room. Old monitors flickered with static, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I approached one of the screens, and it crackled to life for a brief moment, revealing distorted images of what appeared to be the area outside, figures moving in the shadows. My heart raced. "Did you see that?" I exclaimed, stepping back. "What?" Rachel asked, her eyes widening. "I swear there was something out there. It looked like people." Ben frowned, his expression darkening. "It's probably just the static. Let's not get sidetracked." But as we continued our exploration, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. The air felt charged, as if something was lurking just out of sight, watching our every move. We found ourselves in a large, open space filled with debris, a once bustling laboratory, now reduced to chaos. Papers littered the ground and shattered glass crunched beneath our boots. Among the ruins, we discovered a strange device, a metal box covered in wires and glowing faintly. "What do you think this is?" Rachel asked, her eyes sparkling with intrigue. "I have no idea, but it looks like some kind of containment unit," I said, brushing my fingers over its surface. Suddenly, the device emitted a low hum, vibrating beneath my touch. I jumped back, startled, as the lights flickered and the room plunged into darkness. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for my flashlight, desperate to illuminate the gloom. "Stay calm," Ben shouted, his voice barely cutting through the oppressive silence. "Let's regroup." But as I pointed my flashlight into the darkness, I noticed something moving in the shadows. A figure, indistinct and blurred, darting between the remnants of the lab. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt the cold grip of fear tighten around my chest. "Did you see that?" I gasped. "What?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling. "There's something in here with us," I whispered, scanning the room frantically. Just as I was about to suggest we leave, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the lab once more. But the atmosphere had shifted. A palpable tension hung in the air, and I could sense that something had changed. Dr. Hartman's voice crackled through our comms. "Alex, Rachel, Ben, report back. We've got a situation." "What's going on?" I replied, my heart racing. "There's been a disturbance at the entrance. We think someone may have breached the perimeter. You need to return immediately." Before we could respond, a deafening roar erupted from somewhere deep within the dark zone, a sound so primal It resonated in my bones. The ground trembled beneath us, and I felt the walls shake, dust cascading from the ceiling. "Run!" Ben shouted, and we bolted for the exit, adrenaline surging through my veins. As we raced through the crumbling hallways, the shadows seemed to come alive, stretching toward us with sinister intent. The eerie silence was shattered by the sound of footsteps behind us, echoing in pursuit. I dared not look back, my only focus on reaching the exit. We burst through the doors of the control room, gasping for breath. My heart raced as I glanced around, the oppressive darkness closing in. I could still hear the sounds of the chase, the pounding footsteps growing closer, echoing through the empty halls. "Where's Dr. Hartman?" I asked, panic rising within me. "He was in the main lab when we heard the roar," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "We need to find him." "Let's split up," Ben suggested, his eyes darting around. "We'll cover more ground that way. Stay in contact and be careful." Against my better judgment, I nodded, knowing we had no choice. We split up, each of us heading down different corridors, my heart pounding in my ears as I pressed deeper into the darkness. I moved cautiously, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the oppressive gloom. Every sound echoed ominously, amplifying my fear. The corridors twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the heart of the dark zone, and I felt utterly lost. Suddenly, a whisper curled through the air, soft and seductive. "Join us." It beckoned, sending chills coursing through my veins. I hesitated, straining to hear, but the voice faded into silence, replaced by the sound of my own heartbeat. "Dr. Hartman," I called, hoping he would hear me. "Are you there?" Only silence responded. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I quickened my pace, darting down another corridor, desperate to find a way out. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a room filled with monitors, their screens flickering with static. I stepped inside cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The atmosphere felt heavy, oppressive, and the air was thick with a strange energy. On one of the screens, I saw a live feed of the entrance to the dark zone. A figure stood outside the gate, shrouded in darkness, their features obscured. The sight sent a wave of nausea through me. Who were they, and how did they get in? "Alex!" Rachel's voice echoed through the comms, filled with urgency. "I found something. You need to see this." "I'm coming," I replied, retracing my steps. The monitors flickered behind me, but I dared not look back, driven by the need to find my friends. I rushed through the hallways until I found Rachel in a small, cluttered room filled with scattered papers and broken equipment. She looked frantic, her eyes wide as she pointed to a series of files spread across a table. "I think I found out what happened here," she said breathlessly. "These documents, they're all related to some sort of experiment. They were trying to harness a power from another dimension, but something went horribly wrong." "What kind of power?" I asked, scanning the papers. "Look at these drawings," she said, pulling one from the pile. It depicted the same elongated figure I'd seen in the symbols earlier, but now it was surrounded by chaotic energy, dark, swirling tendrils that seemed to pull at reality itself. As I examined the drawings, the room shook violently, and I stumbled back. The lights flickered, casting erratic shadows on the walls. "Ben!" Rachel shouted, her voice filled with fear. "Where is he?" Before I could respond, the walls around us reverberated with another worldly growl, a sound that seemed to resonate from deep within the earth. I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, and the shadows grew thicker, swallowing the room whole. "Run!" I yelled, and we dashed back down the corridor, the oppressive darkness closing in around us. The air felt charged, crackling with energy as we navigated the labyrinthine structure, desperation fueling our escape. As we turned a corner, we stumbled upon a large chamber, its walls adorned with more of the sinister symbols that haunted the dark zone. The atmosphere was thick, suffocating, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon us. There has to be a way out of here, Rachel cried, her voice rising in panic. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall, gaunt silhouette with elongated limbs and a gaping mouth. My heart stopped. It was the creature from the drawings, and it stood before us, exuding an aura of malevolence. "Join us," it whispered, the sound curling around me like a fog. "No, get back," I shouted, grabbing Rachel's arm and pulling her away as the creature stepped forward, its presence radiating fear. We turned to run, but the chamber began to shift, the walls closing in as if the building itself was alive. We dashed through a narrow opening, escaping into another dark corridor, our breaths ragged and frantic. "Where's Ben?" Rachel gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to find him." "Let's head back to the entrance. He'll probably be there," I suggested, but doubt gnawed at me. What if we were too late? We sprinted through the twisting hallways, the darkness pressing in around us. My mind raced as I thought of the consequences of our exploration. We had come seeking answers, but instead we had awakened something ancient and terrifying. Finally, we reached the entrance to the dark zone, the gate looming ahead like a gaping maw. My heart sank as I realized we were too late. The gate had been sealed shut, the heavy metal bars locking us inside. "Alex, what are we going to do?" Rachel cried, panic creeping into her voice. "Try the keycard," I urged, pulling it from my pocket and swiping it against the lock. But nothing happened. The gate remained firmly closed. "Come on," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "There has to be another way out." Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye, and I turned to see Ben emerging from the shadows, his face pale and covered in sweat. "Thank God," I exclaimed, relief flooding through me. "Where have you been?" I was separated from you guys," he stammered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "I saw something horrible." "What do you mean?" Rachel asked, stepping closer. "There are more of those creatures," he said, his voice trembling. "I thought I could find you, but they were everywhere. They're playing a game with us." "What kind of game?" I asked, the weight of his words sinking in. "A game of survival," he replied, his eyes wide with fear. "They're toying with us, drawing us in one by one." Before we could process his words, the ground shook again, and the walls around us warped, twisting in unnatural ways. The air crackled with energy, and I felt a surge of panic as the shadows closed in, becoming thicker and more oppressive. "We need to find a way to break through," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. Ben looked around frantically. "There's got to be another exit somewhere. We can't stay here." We sprinted through the maze-like structure, the sound of our footsteps echoing through the darkness. The growls of the creatures followed us, haunting our every move. As we turned a corner, we found ourselves back in the large chamber filled with symbols, but now it felt alive, pulsating with an ominous energy. "Look," Rachel shouted, pointing to the center of the room. A swirling vortex had formed, dark and chaotic, and the symbols on the walls glowed ominously in response. "What is that?" I asked, my heart racing, as I felt the pull of the vortex. "It's the source of their power," Ben exclaimed. "If we can destroy it, we might have a chance to escape." But as we approached, the creature emerged from the shadows once more, blocking our path. It loomed over us, its mouth stretching wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "You cannot escape," it hissed, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You are part of the game now." "We're not playing your game," I shouted, summoning all my courage. "We'll fight back." The creature lunged at us, and we scattered, each of us searching for anything we could use as a weapon. My flashlight caught the glint of a metal pipe on the ground, and I grabbed it, adrenaline fueling my movements. "Over here," I shouted to Ben and Rachel, who were dodging the creature's attacks. Together we charged at the beast, swinging the pipe with all our strength. It roared in fury, stumbling back as we struck, but its resilience was terrifying. The shadows writhed around it, coiling like serpents, and I could feel the power of the vortex drawing me in. "Focus on the vortex," Rachel shouted, her eyes fierce with determination. "We have to destroy it." We regrouped and dashed towards the swirling darkness, the creature hot on our heels. As we reached the edge of the vortex, I swung the pipe at the glowing symbols etched into the ground. The moment the metal struck, the ground erupted in blinding light, the vortex shrieking in protest. The creature howled, its form twisting and contorting as the energy surged around us. "Keep hitting it!" Ben yelled, his voice rising above the chaos. With each blow, the vortex pulsated violently, the symbols lighting up in a brilliant glow. The air crackled, and I felt a surge of power as the darkness began to unravel. "Now together," Rachel shouted, and we swung our makeshift weapons one last time. The ground exploded with light, and I was thrown backward, tumbling across the cold concrete. The creature let out a final, ear-splitting roar before it was consumed by the blinding energy, its form disintegrating into shadows. As the light faded, I slowly regained my footing, disoriented and trembling. The chamber was eerily silent now. The oppressive darkness lifted. I blinked, taking in the remnants of the chaos around us. "Is it over?" I gasped, looking around for my friends. "Alex," Rachel called, and I spotted her and Ben a few feet away, both looking disheveled but alive. Relief washed over me. "We did it," Ben said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We actually did it." But as I glanced around the chamber, a feeling of dread crept in. "What about the exit? We need to get out of here." "Look," Rachel pointed to a doorway that had appeared where the vortex had once been. "Maybe that's our way out." We hurried toward the doorway, the darkness behind us slowly fading. As we stepped through, I felt a strange sense of finality, as if we were leaving something behind. The corridor beyond was dimly lit, and I could see the faint glimmer of moonlight filtering through cracks in the walls. Hope surged within me as we rushed forward, our hearts racing with anticipation. But just as we reached the end, the shadows began to shift again, and I felt an uneasy sensation crawl up my spine. The darkness was not truly gone. It lingered, ready to reclaim what it had lost. "Keep moving," I urged, pushing through the doorway and into the night. The cool air washed over us as we stumbled into the outside world, the night sky filled with stars. We stood in stunned silence, gasping for breath as the weight of our ordeal began to sink in. "We made it," Rachel said, tears of relief streaming down her face. But just as I began to feel safe, a chilling laughter echoed through the night, reverberating off the buildings. The sound was haunting, a reminder that the dark zone was not finished with us yet. We stumbled away from the entrance, hearts racing as the laughter faded into the distance. Though we had escaped, the feeling of dread lingered, an unwelcome companion that clung to my mind. "What was that?" Ben asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I admitted, shaking my head, "but it felt like we're still being watched." We made our way to the van, and as we climbed inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only scratched the surface of what lay within the dark zone. The darkness had whispered to us, beckoned us deeper into its clutches, and even now, it felt as though it had marked us. As the engine roared to life, I glanced back at the dark zone, its ominous silhouette looming in the distance. A sense of foreboding washed over me, and I knew this wasn't the end. The dark zone was alive, a living entity that thrived on fear and despair, and it would not easily let us go. "Did we really escape?" Rachel asked, her voice quivering. "What if it follows us?" "We'll find a way to stop it," I vowed, my voice firm. "We have to warn others, to uncover the truth of what happened there." But deep down I felt the weight of despair pressing against my heart. The darkness was not finished with us. It had merely retreated into the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. and as we drove away from the dark zone, the echoes of laughter reverberated through my mind, a sinister reminder that some games were never truly over. Weeks passed since our harrowing experience in the dark zone. We tried to return to our normal lives, but it was as if the shadows had followed us, lurking just beyond the edge of our perception. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for the right moment to pounce. Rachel became increasingly obsessed with the data we had collected. She spent hours poring over the notes, trying to find a way to understand the forces we had encountered. I often found her lost in thought, staring at the symbols we had photographed, tracing them with her fingers as if willing them to reveal their secrets. "Alex, we have to go back," she said one evening, her eyes gleaming with determination. "No," I exclaimed, shaking my head. "We barely made it out alive. We can't go back there." "We need to understand what we're dealing with," she insisted, her voice rising. "If we can decipher the symbols, we might find a way to stop whatever is haunting us." "Haunting us?" I echoed, my heart racing. "You think it's just going to let us walk in and figure things out?" But deep down I knew she was right. We hadn't truly escaped. We had merely postponed the inevitable. Days later, we found ourselves back at the edge of the dark zone. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape. A sense of foreboding washed over me as we stood in front of the rusted gate once more. "Are you sure about this?" Ben asked, glancing nervously at the looming darkness. "We don't know what we're walking into." "I don't want to live in fear anymore," Rachel replied, determination etched on her face. "If we want to put an end to this, we have to confront it." With a shaky breath, I nodded, my heart heavy. We stepped through the gate, the familiar darkness enveloping us like a shroud. Once inside, the atmosphere felt different, thicker, charged with energy. The shadows seemed to pulse, twisting and writhing as if alive. I could feel the oppressive weight of the dark zone pressing in around us, but this time we were armed with knowledge. We retraced our steps, heading toward the chamber where we had first encountered the creature. The deeper we went, the more chaotic the energy became, the walls vibrating with a sinister hum. "Stay close," I warned, scanning the darkness for any signs of danger. The weight of dread hung heavy in the air, and I could feel the eyes of the dark zone upon us, lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. As we approached the chamber, the growls echoed through the corridors, louder this time, more menacing. "We need to hurry," Ben urged, his voice tense. When we finally reached the chamber, we were met with a horrifying sight. The swirling vortex had returned, pulsating with dark energy, and the creature stood at its center, its elongated limbs twisting in the shadows. "Welcome back," it hissed, its voice a chilling melody that sent shivers down my spine. "You have come to play." "We're not here to play," I shouted, stepping forward. "We're here to end this." The creature's laughter filled the chamber, a sound that echoed with madness. "You think you can stop me? I am the darkness, and you are but pawns in my game." "Enough," Rachel shouted, raising her flashlight. "We know what you are, and we will not be afraid anymore." With that, we charged towards the vortex, determination fueling our every step. The creature lunged at us, but we dodged its grasp, moving toward the symbols that lined the walls. "Look for a way to break the cycle," I shouted, my heart racing as I swung my flashlight at the symbols. Rachel and Ben joined me, each of us striking the symbols with all our strength. The moment the metal connected, a blinding light erupted from the symbols, flooding the chamber with an intensity that threatened to tear apart the darkness. "No!" the creature shrieked, its form flickering as the energy surged around us. "You cannot escape." But we pressed on, each strike resonating with power as the light engulfed the chamber. The darkness began to unravel, the vortex convulsing violently as the creature writhed in agony. With one final blow, the symbols shattered, and the chamber erupted in a brilliant flash. The creature let out a final, heart-wrenching scream as it was consumed by the light, disintegrating into shadows. As the light faded, I blinked, disoriented by the sudden absence of the creature. The chamber was eerily silent now, the oppressive energy dissipating into nothingness. "We did it!" Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. But as we stood there, catching our breath, a chilling realization sank in. The shadows were not truly gone. They lingered, ready to reclaim what had been lost. "What now?" Ben asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. "We need to destroy the source," I said, my heart racing. "The dark zone is a living entity. If we don't finish this, it will return." Together we stepped towards the remnants of the vortex, the energy still crackling in the air. I could feel the darkness trying to pull us in, but we pressed forward, determined to break the cycle once and for all. As we reached the center, I could see the symbols glowing faintly, still pulsing with energy. "We have to dismantle it," I urged. "We need to destroy the heart of the dark zone." With our combined strength, we began to strike at the symbols, each blow resonating with power as the darkness writhed around us. The air crackled, the energy swirling chaotically as we fought against it. But just as we felt the tide turning, the shadow surged forward, overwhelming us with a force we couldn't withstand. I stumbled back, feeling the darkness close in, and I knew we were running out of time. "Hold on," Rachel shouted, her voice filled with urgency. "We can't give up." With renewed determination, we struck the symbols with everything we had, the light pulsing brighter with each hit. The darkness began to unravel, but it fought back, the shadows reaching for us like grasping hands. "Keep going," Ben yelled, his eyes wide with fear. Finally, with one last strike, the heart of the dark zone shattered, releasing a wave of light that consumed the chamber. The shadows screamed, their voices a cacophony of rage and despair as the darkness was swept away. As the light faded, we stood in the aftermath of the battle, breathing heavily as the oppressive weight of the dark zone lifted. The shadows had been banished, their hold broken at last. "We did it!" I gasped, looking at my friends, their faces filled with disbelief and relief. But the sense of victory was tinged with sorrow. We had fought against an ancient evil, but the scars of our ordeal remained. "What now?" Rachel asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "Now we leave this place behind," I replied, my heart heavy with the memories of what we had faced. "We have to warn others, share our story, and ensure that this darkness never returns." As we stepped toward the exit, a soft breeze caressed our faces, and I felt the warmth of the sun breaking through the remnants of night. We had emerged from the shadows, but I knew that the scars of our experience would linger. The dark zone may have been defeated, but its whispers would haunt us forever, a reminder that darkness could never truly be eradicated. It merely lay in wait, ready for the next opportunity to rise again. And as we stepped into the light of a new day, I promised myself that we would continue to fight against the shadows, no matter where they lurked, ensuring that no one would ever have to face the darkness alone again.